Chapter 5 The Discovery of Happiness. If you could have the thing you most desire, if you could realize your dearest wish, for what would you ask? What is the highest personal good, beside which all other values become secondary in importance? Many people, perhaps most people, would hastily answer in terms of financial security, health, power, love, or the realization of some ambition or desire fondly cherished at the moment. In each case, the answer would of necessity be partial. Well, how often can we give full answers to anything? Would not the wise man, if his reply be thoughtful and reflective, conclude that the one great thing most to be desired in this fleeting life is that state or quality we call happiness, and this is the root motive underlying all our labor and struggle? Man's activity, in a strict sense, is motivated by no single objective. He is driven, quite largely, by necessity, and varying impulses feed the stream of his purpose. But, reduced to its simplest terms, so far as that is possible, the desire for happiness indubitably is the fundamental goal of every individual. Happiness is something greatly to be distinguished from pleasure. Pleasure differs from happiness, less in form than in quality. Happiness is a concept involving something deeper, richer, more satisfying, more spiritual. Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, and therefore longer lasting than pleasure. The essential difference between the two terms is illustrated by the fact that one could, for example, achieve real and abiding happiness by dying for another person. Well, if it's necessary, right? Whereas such an act of self-abnegation would by no means be described as pleasure. In A Tale of Two Cities, Dickens tells us that they said of Sidney Carton, who gave his life for one he loved, his was the peacefulest face in Paris that night. Carton manifestly had experienced happiness rather than pleasure. Happiness, thus conceived, is the supreme desire. Some may object to this conclusion on the ground that it places a low estimate on life, that the ultimate purpose of living is to find God or truth or beauty, to develop goodness, or as Carlyle would have it, to achieve excellence in work. Is it not true, however, that in the long run these boons are of value, for the reason that they in themselves bring us happiness? We seek God because our souls tell us the truth, which experience confirms, that to find God is to find true happiness. It is therefore sound doctrine to say that the chief end of man is to know God, for to enjoy Him forever is to possess the quality known as happiness. The case for happiness as the chief good seems to be on solid footing. As we observe people today, it is evident that many are not happy. People have their jokes and seek to be joyous, but with tragic frequency. That gaiety is simulated. Now, somebody who is gay in a different sense, saying that they've, telling people to seek their joy, is a lot more unhappy than you'd expect a typical person to be, in that specific example that I'm talking about. And, why this, you must accept you don't. You don't have to accept somebody's lifestyle if it's good enough for them, right? Underneath, they are oppressed by what Wordsworth termed, with sharp discernment, the weary weight of this unintelligible world. People go to movies and laugh at comedy if it is funny. Well, usually if it's not funny, but which quite often it is not, for vulgarity in any form lacks the subtlety of humor. there's certain extents that are wrong to go to for a joke. You don't lie. You don't mention evil for entertainment. And you just don't be gross for the sake of being gross, right? And their laughter is less than hearty. It is often on the surface, and glisten of tears is ill concealed. There is a profound undercurrent of sadness which, alas, has robbed life of much of its old time spontaneity, and spontaneous joy is essential to happiness, as Santayana tells us in The Last Puritan. To be happy was to sing, not to be made to sing, or to sing by rote, or as an art, or for a purpose, but spontaneously, religiously, because something sang within you, and all else, for the moment, was remote and still. It is to be expected, of course, that existing conditions should not be conducive to happiness, but the trouble is a deeper one. Long before the Depression, Cluttenbrock, the distinguished essayist, was saying, in spite of our games and our science and machinery, we find ourselves growing duller. The plain fact of the matter is that our age has for years been losing contact with the deep springs of human happiness, and we shall not again enjoy life in the profoundest sense until we reestablish that contact. Now, contact is the way that the word for prayer is translated in different languages. The salah in the Bible is the same salah in the Quran. Well, I mean, salah. Okay, yeah. Different languages, but basically the same term. You face a direction, you make contact, but it's implied that you make vibrations, you make specific gestures, and all that other stuff. And it's not just going through the movements. And when you go through the movements, you have to, you relax and all that stuff. You control your breathing, and and you have this concept with it, and it all lines up, which is also an idea of the term. We fell into the old and subtle error of thinking that contentment is dependent upon things. As we piled up our gold and beheld the appliances and gadgets which a prolific science heaped in amazing profuseness upon us, we became convinced, beyond any possibility of error, that the golden age of happiness had come at long last. The world was now so full of a number of things, we should all be as happy as kings, or so we imagined. But as the child, only a few days after Christmas, wearies of his toys, so men and women everywhere begin to cast around for the old delight in life which had escaped them amidst the glitter of their new professions. Perhaps we are now beginning to realize that we have been very adolescent in our conceited notion that in our generation reposes the wisdom of the ages. From the shades of a remote past comes the voice of Marcus Aurelius. Remember that very little is needed to make a happy life. But we smile. We know better than that. We confuse the ability to make fast automobiles to quickly get us to places we have no desire to go, and radios to bring us sounds. Now, we got to be careful with our sounds and lights in this modern age. People are casting down their vision. They're dying younger because of the loud sounds that are coming forth. And the point, they don't even realize it. People think that rather than the objective fact of their stress being increased, they somehow convince themselves that it's being decreased. And one of the tricks is that when it turns off, and then you aren't blasting yourself anymore, you notice what it's been doing to you. But then again, you may not interpret it that way. It's like, oh, my family wants peace and quiet, or, whatever the case is, right? Or you're just not exciting. And it's like, no, you that has to have everything blasted to beat them into whatever, you're the person who doesn't know how to experience excitement. Well, at least not safely, right? Many of which are scarcely worth hearing, with genuine progress in the art of living. Progress, as we shall discover, depends not upon speed, but upon peace, not upon noise, but upon quietness. If our many inventions can free man from drudgery and provide him with leisure for cultural and spiritual advancement, they will exercise the salutary function for which they surely were ordained. Otherwise, they will drive us quite mad. There are happy evidences, now that we are learning a fine discrimination regarding the intrinsic value of things, as we become increasingly aware that our naive dependence upon them for happiness is not warranted. Our generation is not happy, moreover, because it is an age of sensation. Sensation is soon exhausted, and like a cumulative drug, requires heavier doses until finally the very power to respond to stimulation is satiated. Well, dulled to the point where, the same thing doesn't get us anymore, or maybe we can't reach that point. We are greatly interested in diet as it affects the body, all of which is not without value, but multitudes of us feed upon a mental and cultural froth which is producing in society a general condition of spiritual sclerosis. Plainly, we are undernourished spiritually, as is shown by the discontent, weariness, and false stimulation of life everywhere. Consider the vast number of suicides. They totaled, I am informed, nearly 8% of the death claims of one large insurance company in a recent year, which is why that's been changed. They no longer consider suicides. And since 2021, certain medical stuff has been listed explicitly as that, because, but I can't go into that here. These were people who could stand the thinness of life, no longer in a desperation flung themselves out of it. It is reminiscent of a terrible line in the scriptures. He gave them their desires, but sent leanness into their souls. Oh, I don't know where that is. Tell me where that is, people. Our happiness is to be found in sources deeper than man-made things. Lawrence of Arabia, in his 7 Pillars of Wisdom, relates a curious incident which reveals man's hunger for something more fundamental. Don't let liberals cast down the term fundamental and fundamentalist and, than that represented by his own design and craftsmanship. With an Arab friend, he rode far out on the desert to ruins of an ancient place which, according to tradition, had been erected by a Roman ruler for his queen. Legend has it that the mortar was kneaded not with water, but with the essential oil of flowers. In each room, the odor was different. The Arab led Lawrence about, explaining that this was the rose room, this the jasmine room, that the violet room, and they sniffed the atmosphere for the lingering scent of those lovely flowers. At length, the Arab said, "But come smell the best odor of all," and taking him to a broken casement, they smelt the clean air off the desert. It had come long and lazily over hundreds of miles from faraway Euphrates, over vast expanses of desert where no human habitation is found. Lovingly it had whispered among the grasses and played with the sands until it possessed within itself the essence of the good earth, the mother of all mankind. Now, the pure smells of nature can make, scent offerings not so necessary. We do these in our temples because we're, this is a closed space or something, right? and mother of all mankind. We can take the gender language off of nature's parts and all that stuff. But yeah. It whispered among the grasses and played with the sands until it possessed with itself the essence of the good earth, the mother of all mankind. Deeply, the two men smelled, drinking it into their souls, in that mystic affinity which man feels for the dust from whence he came and to which at last he shall return. In its wistful search for happiness, mankind must turn finally to those fair winds that blow from the land of the spirit, where the whir of motors is lost in an ancient stillness. There, life naturally recovers from its rightful dominance over life artificial. Oh, I guess that was meant to just be life natural recovers from its rightful dominance over life artificial, and the litter filled and long unused springs of human happiness flow freely once more. Considering the sources of happiness, it would perhaps be well to touch upon those which are commonly considered essential to the joy of life. Some people think that if they could have money, they would be happy. Money does make its contribution to happiness, and it is foolish to deny that fact. The moralist may declare that the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, loving the material world isn't evil in itself, but it's broader than money if it's material things. And it is well enough to refer slightingly to it as filthy lucre. But most of us like the root just the same, and the unsanitary condition of the currency will not deter us from gladly accepting it. Money can help give happiness by relieving one from common financial worries. It mightily helps in contentment to be in a position to pay the rent regularly and to settle for your life insurance. But money is no guarantee of happiness. For have we not all seen rich people who are unhappy and poor people who are very happy? It is significant as Chesterton reminds us in his study of Charles Dickens that simple gladness and optimism are frequently found most completely among the poor rather than the affluent. We might also reasonably expect to look for happiness and bodily health. Surely health is a great blessing, and fortunate indeed is the individual who has it. But not every healthy person is happy, nor does health ensure happiness. I recall once having a very severe toothache, sitting in a dentist's office awaiting my turn. As I sat there suffering, as only a toothache can torture, I looked enviously out of the window at the people passing by. Disconsolately, I meditated, wondering how many in that passing throng had toothaches, and I decided that the happy ones were those who did not have toothaches, and that the unhappy ones were those who, like myself, did have an aching tooth. I came to the conclusion that if only I could stop that tooth from aching, I would never be unhappy again, the fallacy of which, reasoning later, became quite apparent. There are healthy people who are not happy, and on the other hand, there are invalids whose radiant faces indicate a spirit that has overcome the world and realized the secret of happiness. There are those who feel that they would be perfectly happy if they could be relieved of all the cares and responsibilities of life. They would be everlastingly content, they argue, if they could see the last of all the common perplexities and problems of this vale of tears. Now, most people who try to retire don't have that. If they don't have religion or something, they'll drive around and spend all their money and not take care of themselves and stuff like this, or travel and all that other stuff, and not take care of the home and all that because they, don't don't see responsibilities other than, their experience, and they can't get the experience they thought they could get in retirement. The Veil of Tears, yeah. Dr. William Lyon Phelps answers that idea by philosophizing that in such a case, the happiest being on earth would be neither man nor woman, but the American cow. He suggests that the American cow, because in other countries cows are hitched up and made to draw loads, whereas in this land of freedom, they are cows of leisure. In a whimsical page, well, they're not as healthy animals, they're all cooped up and all that. In a whimsical page or so, Professor Phelps deliciously pursues his quaint thesis. The cow, he says, completes her toilet for the day with one flick of her tail. This is a distinct advantage over humanity, for the average woman requires 45 minutes at least, and a man little less. I don't know. Women tend to hold it more, so men are probably back and forth to the bathroom more often. The cow does not even worry about her meals, but just peacefully munches the lush grass, after which she reclines in the shade of a tree until time for the next meal. And I'm referring to needs, not, they want to primp up their makeup or something like that they're probably referring to. There is, upon her placid features, no pale cast of thought. She does not find it necessary to worry her mind about anything. She need not be concerned about a salary reduction, or who is going to be elected president, or about saving the Constitution. She does not have to meet a payroll, or preach a sermon, or find a job, or write a book. There is no apprehensiveness on the face of a cow. She is a perfect humanist in that the world is what it is, and she can do nothing about it, and so why worry about it, but with the due consideration for all the benefits of such placidity of life. Who, queries Dr. Phelps, would want to be a cow? For most of us, life with all its cares, problems, and strivings is a decided advantage over bovine peace. William James found Lake Chautauqua too idealistically perfect for him. Or, in a way, that's probably just not enough, right? Chautauqua, I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. He preferred the imperfect, but far more interesting world of labor and struggle. Struggle is how you translate the word jihad, so don't let the news confuse you there. What are some positive suggestions for those who are sincerely looking for the chance to be happy? First of all, I believe it will be found in the simple things familiarly about us all. Look for it in a city street, bustling with traffic, across which the sunlight falls in late afternoon, making it as mellow as an old master. Get the delight of seeing a fugitive little park tucked away in an old backwater of a city's life, to which clings the atmosphere of romantic days long gone. Find it in the vision of a ship's funnel at a street's end, bringing to one the romantic suggestion of dreamy, faraway ports. Look for your happiness not in that shining metal, which corrodes, but in the smell of newly turned soil, in rain against a window pane, running down in meandering rivulets, in sunlight on a summer's afternoon, splashing down through the leaves to a well-kept lawn, or in the lazy, sun-speckled bank of a trout stream. Look for it in an autumn landscape with blue haze over the hills and the haunting, fugitive sadness of dying year. Rustle your way among falling leaves on an autumn afternoon, or feel the crunch of snow underneath on a starlit winter night. Warm yourself before the ruddy glow of a wood fire, stretching out your legs in glad content. These are the things that make a man so happy inside of him that he could sing aloud. There are fundamental things, old and deep. Once on a Sunday morning, A little old lady with a face with gladness overspread came up to shake hands with her pastor. I said, "How are you this morning?" knowing full well the question to be superfluous. "Oh," she replied, "I'm always all right," and added, "I love to live," which simple sentence in its radiant eloquence was a glorious sermon in itself. Didn't the Buddha just hold up a flower as a sermon once? Well, the one we talk about, there were a bunch of Buddhas, but she added, "And this little poem is just the way I feel about it." And pressing it into my hand, she went off, leaving a trail of sunshine in her wake. This lovely verse by Grace Crowell is what she gave me as part of her philosophy of happiness. And I have found such joy from Light of the Years by Grace Noel Crowell, reprinted by permission of Harper and Brothers publishers. Well, now we don't have to ask permission because the copyrights are gone with even this book, but I'm sure there's some format that you can't take pictures of the pages. A lot of books that I share, I don't visually share because they're reprints. And throwing in some commentary, gives fair use to the possibility of it not being, what's the word? Some unmarked edit, right? And sometimes they do the different. They write, somebody writes a book and it's just an edited old book, and like this one Quran translation that I saw was just an edit of the Marmaduke Pickthall one, and it's not exactly a new translation, and I realized that when I saw it. I have found such joy in simple things: a plain, clean room, a nut-brown loaf of bread, a cup of milk, a kettle as it sings, the shelter of a roof above my head, and in a leaf-faced square upon a floor where yellow sunlight glimmers through a door. I have found such joy in things that fill my quiet days: a curtain's blowing grace, a growing plant upon a windowsill, a rose fresh cut and placed within a vase, a table cleared, a lamp beside a chair, and books I long have loved beside me there. Oh, I have found such joy, I wish I might tell every woman who goes seeking far for some elusive, feverish delight, that very close to home the great joys are these fundamental things, old as the race, yet never through the ages commonplace. And I prefer the 19 race theory. Charles Darwin divided Europe into too many races, but they mean human, right? There is another simple thing that helps one to be happy and enjoy life. All of these things are simple, but do not understand them because of that fact, for simplicity is usually the honored repository of the greatest truths. The profound and the simple are first cousins. The great secret is that happiness is not to be found in getting, but in giving. It is not what you do for yourself that will give you the greatest happiness, but rather what you do for others. You can prove this to yourself by noticing that warm glow around the heart which comes when you do a kindly act. And that is why the great thinker, Jesus, who talked much about these things, said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." Well, on one plane, right? As you read these words, if you are unhappy, think of the most unfortunate person you know. At your first opportunity, go to him and help him in some way, even if only by a friendly word. because that would be an abrogation in one's happy world, is knowing that outside there, right? It will encourage him, to be sure, but I'm thinking of what it will do to you. It will set little songs singing in your heart. There is no joy like it, and it will make the whole world brighter for you. More than that, in this matter of giving for others, there is a priceless secret of personal power. Lloyd Douglas has graphically portrayed what I mean in his books, Forgive Us Our Trespasses and The Magnificent Obsession. Oh, well, beliefs are often more of an issue than the actual deeds, right? Um, thus goes the thing with, people's believing that something wrong is right. That can be worse than actually doing things. I'm not saying, as long if you believe, no, you got to deal with it on both ends. His thesis and mine is that when one gives to others without thought of gain for himself and with a sincere purpose, he sets free in his own personality a power which endows the life with a richness hitherto undreamed of. This was what Jesus was always trying to get people to do. Many Christians fail to do it, and their lives are like a 25-watt bulb when they could shine with the brilliance of 150 watts. Well, 25-watt bulb, you should be able to see with that one, so that's good enough. It's, well, I get what they mean, but you know what I mean. Or to use another figure, many people, even members of the church, in good standing, are like one rowing a boat with great labor, when all the time under the seat is a motor which, without toil, could send the craft forward at great speed. This power, which in its turn lifts and glorifies the life of the individual who employs it, is releasable by the simple practice of forgetting selfish pleasure and emolument and devoting one's activities and thought to assisting others. A distinguished editorial writer, told me that for years he lived the selfish life, making money only to lavish it upon himself. At length, an overwhelming ennui overtook him, and the drabness of its days became oppressive. Pleasures lost their piquancy. The common round became unutterably dreary. Even love died between his wife and himself, and they were divorced. Well, marriage needs to be more than a feeling, right? Then it happened that he fell upon a strange secret. He learned that a great teacher was right when, long ago, he said, He that saveth his life shall lose it, but he that giveth his life shall find it an hundredfold. This man truly had lost life, for little remains when happiness is gone. He was saving his life, and he had lost it, but now he began to give it away. And, wonder of wonders, he had it all back again, only this time much deeper and richer than ever before. And even as he told me his story, he took pains to make it clear that he was not a churchman or even a Christian in the formal sense. I replied to him that creedal formality had nothing to do with it, that quite apart from labels of any sort, he had, through his self-giving, realized the power of Christ, his personality. With a smile, he said, Perhaps I have been converted. Yes, he reflected, using the great old word gingerly. Perhaps I have been converted. Indeed, and what is it but conversion when a man who was dead is now alive? Something deep and tender within the man bubbled up in a buoyant gladness, which made one know that for him life now is good. People are so foolish in living a fractional life when it could easily be complete. The mistake is in allowing our thought and activity to focus inwardly. In so doing, we become abnormally conscious of ourselves. to the end that we develop envy, greed, touchiness, self-pride, all misery-making characteristics. In a word, the self becomes horribly conscious of self because it is concerned only with self. On the contrary, when one begins to focus his life outwardly, he forgets himself and the many irritating factors which formerly troubled him. Even the little cares of life scamper like shadows before the rising sun, or they become so innocuous that they are easily handled. They lose their commanding influence. The outgoing life is the normal life, the well-adjusted life, and only in such inner unity of personality as the self-giving process engenders can happiness exist. There is still another suggestion that must be made in any adequate treatment of the problem of human happiness. To find real and unalloyed happiness, it is necessary to live a clean, upright life and to enjoy the peace of an approving conscience. Psychology gives this principle honored place in its understanding of human personality. The new terminology does not conceal the identity of the time-honored yet ever new truth that the wages of sin is death. Mr. Walter Lippmann, who is by no means a Sunday school superintendent of the fundamentalist variety, well, so even he's kind of using the term whatever, because why Sunday instead of Saturday, right? The Bible says Saturday. And I'm sure if we knew about that church, we could point out other things where, with lack of contradiction in the Bible, they were picking something contrary to the Bible. Or, for that matter, any variety confirms our thesis. There is now, he says, a generation approaching middle age which exerted the privilege of attacking the Puritan or Victorian tradition without restraint, which, again, tends to be conservative rather than a fundamentalist. Their convictions are reported in many of the late works of fiction. Do they report they have found happiness in their freedom? Hardly, continues Mr. Lippmann. Instead of the happiness they were promised, they have found only the wasteland. It has always been so, and I suppose always will be, that an unspiritual, immoral, pagan life, well, pagan is, you divide land into working plots, in the last analysis brings unhappiness. Well, now we take turns at the factory or something, right? So it's not the, let's not pretend that that's better than pagan living. It's a translation of the same thing, really. No man can live a life that is wrong and be happy. And this is not a rule established by the church. Nature wove it into the plan of things long before there ever was a church. Now see, church starts following your nature. That didn't have a starting point in humanity. So there's a difference between religion and church. When I was a boy, I was sometimes under the care of an old school, small town doctor. He drove up to the house in a horse-drawn buggy. I would watch him from the window. A big man, when he stepped out from his buggy, it rocked like a ship in a storm. From behind the seat, he took out a large stone, attached it to a strap, by means of which he anchored the horse, a superfluous precaution, for the nag immediately went to sleep. Carrying his little black case, the doctor came in like a breath of fresh air, though trailed by familiar medicinal odors. Well, sometimes it's what's put with the medicine, but yeah. I'm sure menthol is one of them, right? He sat down by the bed, felt my pulse, pounded my chest, looked at my tongue, and took my temperature. He then opened his case and gave me some little pills. I often suspicioned they were used for every ailment about the countryside, but at any rate, I got well to tell the story. I like this old country doctor, and though now his office is closed forever, and the last patient has been treated, I shall never forget him. Today, one doctor diagnoses your case, another operates. One removes your teeth, another your appendix, and another your tonsils, and another what is left of you. And doubtless, they do it more efficiently than the old doctor. Well, remember that shamanistic experience, that the person can kind of have, you got, it's like, you, in the end, you kind of know it's not your physical body, but you're experiencing it like your physical body is being taken away bit by bit. Your skin, your flesh, your bones, and all that stuff, and then you realize you're something else. Maybe you realize you're, the mind at that point, and then you kind of go beyond the mind, and it's very interesting if you had it. And it's not as scary as it sounds. You know what I mean? But even so, I, for one, rise up to pay him tribute. Once, when he came to see me about a pain of which I complained, after prescribing for it, he put his great kindly hand upon my head and tousled it, saying, "Pains in the body will heal, sonny, but never do anything that will give you a pain in the mind. I cannot heal that kind." Nowadays they try to drug that away too. But fine Christian that he was, he added, there is a great physician who can, but I hope you will not need him for that. He would not have called himself a psychiatrist. That would have been rather newfangled for him, but in a deep sense he was just like that. Well, some people think of Buddhism like a psychiatric spiritualism, and it's like, well, that stuff used to be part of that, right? He was a physician of the mind, and of the soul too, for he knew that pains in the mind caused by wrong living filch the bloom from life and rob it of happiness. Keep the pains out of the mind by a simple, virtuous life, or if the pain is already there, go to that greatest of all physicians, who keeps office in the New Testament, and let him by faith make you whole again. Now, I would call people to the good and truth of any person or path, you could say. But I'm not saying that any particular book is, pure in that respect. Well, not any of the ones mentioned in this book anyways. Well, I mean, thus far.